Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life emotions and situations. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The content may involve sensitive themes such as infidelity and emotional trauma. Reader discretion is advised. If someone had asked me a year ago what my life was like, I would have told them it was beautiful. I had a husband who made me feel cherished, a son who made every day feel like a blessing, and a home that echoed with laughter and love. We weren't rich, but we had enough. More importantly, we had each other, or at least, I thought we did. My husband, Armin, worked in logistics and often traveled for business. It wasn't uncommon for him to be gone for a few days at a time. At first, his absence would make me feel anxious, but over the years, I had learned to manage things at home. Trust was the glue that held our little family together. Our son, Sami, was 10, curious, quiet, and unusually observant for his age. He loved puzzles, drawing, and spending time building things with his toy blocks. He and his father were especially close. They had a ritual: whenever Armin returned from a trip, he would bring Sami a small souvenir, sometimes a keychain, sometimes a comic book from the airport. That tradition made his absence easier on all of us. I worked part-time from home as a content writer. It allowed me to be around for Sami and keep our home running smoothly. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. It wasn't big, but it was filled with warmth. Armin always made sure to call us every evening when he was away. His voice was soothing, his jokes silly. Even if he was tired, he made time to talk to Sami before bedtime. Looking back now, I realize how I had romanticized it all. I wanted to believe in the perfect husband, the perfect marriage. I wanted to believe that love could weather any distance. But something changed that winter. I remember it so clearly. The day he left for what he said was a 3-day trip to Lahore. He kissed me goodbye, hugged Sami tightly, and promised to be back by Sunday afternoon. I stood at the door, waving until his car disappeared down the street. It was a routine goodbye, one I had gone through dozens of times before. Except this time, it wasn't routine. Something was different. That night, Sami was unusually quiet at dinner. I noticed him picking at his food, his eyes darting toward the hallway every few minutes, as if he were expecting something or someone. I asked him if everything was all right. He nodded but didn't speak much. I chalked it up to missing his father. What I didn't know was that this time, the goodbye was not just a temporary farewell. It was the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to face. The days that followed Armin's departure felt slower than usual. I kept myself busy with work and house chores, trying not to overthink his absence. I had done this countless times before, waiting for him, managing the house, making sure Sami was okay. But this time, the air in the house felt different. Heavier. Sami's behavior started to worry me. He wasn't just quiet, he was withdrawn. He stopped asking to play his favorite board games in the evenings and spent more time in his room with the door slightly ajar, as if waiting for someone to peek in. I found him staring out the window several times, watching the street silently. When I asked if he missed his dad, he gave me a vague shrug and said, "I guess." That wasn't like him. He used to count down the days until Armin's return. Something had shifted inside him, and I couldn't put my finger on what. I figured maybe he had a bad day at school, or perhaps he was going through a phase. Kids do that sometimes, I reminded myself. One evening, while folding laundry in his room, I noticed something odd. A sketchbook lay open on his bed, the pages filled with drawings. Most were of our family, smiling stick figures holding hands, hearts above their heads, little details like his favorite blue shirt or his dad's briefcase. But one picture stood out. It was different. Darker. In it, a man and a woman stood far apart from each other. Their mouths were drawn as jagged lines, and in between them was a small figure, clearly meant to be Sami, standing alone, tears falling from his eyes. I paused. "Sami," I said softly, "can we talk about this drawing?" He looked up from his toy blocks, hesitated, then said, "It's just a picture." "Why is the boy crying?" I asked gently. He shrugged again, this time even more guarded. "Maybe because his dad lied." The words hit me like a truck. My heart skipped a beat, and I tried to stay calm. "What do you mean by that, sweetheart?" He didn't answer. He just turned his back to me and started stacking his blocks again. I let it go for the moment. But something was clearly wrong. I began replaying Armin's behavior before he left. Had he seemed distant? Was there something in his voice? In his eyes? But no, he'd kissed me, smiled, acted the same. Or maybe I had trained myself not to see the cracks. That night, after Sami went to bed, I sat alone on the couch and stared at my phone. I wanted to call Armin, to hear his voice, to get reassurance. But when I dialed, it went straight to voicemail. That had never happened before. Somewhere deep inside, I felt the first sting of dread. Not suspicion. Not anger. Just a quiet, creeping fear that the foundation I had built my life upon was beginning to shake. And my son, my sweet, observant son, seemed to know something I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sami had fallen asleep early, curled up beside his stuffed dinosaur, but I lay awake listening to the creaks and groans of the house. The ticking of the wall clock, normally comforting, now felt intrusive. My mind was racing, filled with unanswered questions. It was almost midnight when the phone rang. The sudden jolt of sound made me jump. I quickly grabbed it from the nightstand. The screen showed unknown number. My heart beat faster. "Armin?" "Hello." I answered quietly, trying not to wake Sami. But there was no voice on the other end. Just silence. "Hello," I repeated, louder this time. Still nothing. I was about to hang up when I heard it, a faint sound. Breathing. Someone was definitely on the line, but they weren't saying anything. Just breathing. Then, after a few seconds, the call disconnected. I stared at the phone, unsettled. It wasn't like Armin to call from an unknown number, and if it was him, why wouldn't he speak? My thoughts spiraled, but I told myself it was probably just a prank or a wrong number. I went to check on Sami, needing the comfort of seeing him safe and asleep. But when I opened the door to his room, I froze. He was sitting up in bed, wide awake, staring at the window. "Sami," I whispered, trying to steady my voice. "Why are you awake?" He turned to me slowly. His face looked pale in the dim light. "I heard you on the phone," he said. I nodded. Yes, but no one answered. Just silence. He looked down at his hands, twisting the edge of his blanket. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Maybe it was the lady Daddy talks to when you're not home." I blinked, unsure I'd heard him right. "What lady?" He hesitated. "Sometimes when Dad is home and you're at the market, he talks on the phone and says things he doesn't say to you. He laughs more. One time, he told her he missed her." My legs felt weak, and I sat down on the edge of his bed. "When was this, sweetheart?" He shrugged. "A few weeks ago." I heard him in the kitchen. He didn't know I was there. I was stunned into silence. Sami looked at me, his eyes wide and serious. "Mom, I think he's lying to us." I didn't know what to say. I couldn't lie to him, not when he already knew too much. But I couldn't show him the full storm of emotions crashing inside me either. I just reached out and held him, brushing his hair gently. "Thank you for telling me," I whispered. "You're very brave." That night, after he fell asleep in my arms, I sat in the dark for a long time. The midnight call, the odd behavior, the drawing, and now this, it was all pointing in one direction. And it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the beginning of the truth. The next morning, I moved like a ghost through the house. My body functioned on routine, making breakfast, packing Sami's lunch, checking his homework, but my mind was elsewhere. His words from the night before kept repeating in my head, "I think he's lying to us." After dropping Sami at school, I returned home to a quiet house. I stood in the living room for a long while, staring at nothing. My eyes eventually drifted toward the hallway, toward Armin's study. I'd never snooped through his things before. We had always respected each other's space and privacy. But now, everything felt like a lie wrapped in comfort. And something inside me needed answers. Needed confirmation, either to prove Sami's fears wrong or to face the truth head-on. I walked to the study, heart pounding. His desk was neat as always, with his laptop and files stacked in precise order. I began searching through drawers, nothing unusual. Bills, pens, papers. Then I turned my attention to the bookshelf behind his desk. One row held several thick, dusty books on logistics and management. As I ran my fingers along the spines, one book caught my attention. It looked newer, barely touched. I pulled it out. Behind it was a phone. A second phone. My breath caught. It was slim, black, and slightly scratched. I pressed the power button. It lit up. No password. Strange. The messages loaded instantly. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the inbox. Most texts were from someone saved only as S. Each message felt like a dagger. Missed hearing your voice today. I can't stop thinking about last weekend. When will she be out again? And from him, I'll call you after she leaves. Can't wait to hold you again. It wasn't just flirtation. It was deep, long-term. This wasn't some random fling. This was a relationship. A secret life hidden in a drawer behind a bookshelf. I sat on the edge of his chair, my entire body numb. How long had this been going on? Had it started before Sami was born? Had any of those business trips even been real? I felt sick. Betrayed. Hollowed out. Then something else hit me, Sami. He had seen things. Heard things. And instead of confronting us, he carried that weight quietly, unsure of what it all meant, unsure of how to protect his mother from a truth that he himself didn't fully understand. I put the phone down and stared out the window. The home I thought was safe, wasn't. The marriage I thought was strong, was broken. And the man I thought I knew, was a stranger. But I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. I owed it to myself and, more importantly, to my son to face this head-on. Because if a child could carry the truth on his shoulders, then surely a mother could carry the courage to act on it. I didn't know how to feel as I drove to pick Sami up from school. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, my mind replaying every moment over the past few months, every lie disguised as a smile, every phone call that seemed rushed, every I love you that now felt scripted. But I had to hold it together. For him. Sami climbed into the car, quiet as usual. How was school, baby? I asked, forcing calm into my voice. He shrugged. Okay. When we got home, he went straight to his room. I stood outside his door for a minute, hand hovering near the knob. I knew this conversation couldn't wait. I knocked gently and walked in. He was sitting at his desk, sketching. Can we talk for a moment, sweetheart? I asked. He looked up, wary but open. I sat on the edge of his bed and patted the space beside me. He came over slowly, his little hands clasped tightly together. I didn't want to push him. I just needed the truth, from his perspective. You remember what you told me the other night, about the lady Daddy talks to? He nodded. I found something today, I said carefully. And I think you were right. But I need to understand everything. Can you tell me what you saw? He hesitated. Then, in the softest voice, he said, I saw her. My heart stopped. When? I whispered. Last month. On a Saturday. You went to the grocery store. I was playing with my cars. And someone rang the bell. I thought it was the delivery guy. But it was a lady. Pretty. She smiled at Daddy and he let her in. Tears burned at my eyes, but I stayed composed. What happened next? They went to the kitchen. I followed quietly. I didn't want them to see me. I watched from the hallway. His voice grew smaller. They hugged. Then she kissed him. I didn't understand why. I swallowed hard. Did Daddy see you? No. I ran to my room and closed the door. I didn't know what to do. So, I took your phone the next time they were together, Anne. I made a video. I blinked. A video? He nodded. Just in case you didn't believe me. He stood, opened his drawer, and pulled out an old USB. I saved it here. My hands trembled as I took it. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't want to hurt you, he said, eyes glossy. But it hurt me too. That was the moment my heart shattered, not because of Arman's betrayal, but because my child had been carrying the burden of protecting me. I wrapped him in my arms, holding him tightly. You did the right thing. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so sorry you had to see that. We cried together. In that room, mother and son, bound not just by blood, but by a pain we didn't ask for. And I knew then, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about healing what could still be saved, my son's innocence, his trust, his peace. That night, after Sami had fallen asleep beside me, his tiny frame curled up like he was still trying to shield himself from the world, I sat in the dark with the USB clutched in my hand. My whole body trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. The video was short, blurry, and filmed from behind a cracked door, but it was clear enough. There he was, Armin, standing in our kitchen, smiling like I hadn't seen him smile in months. Across from him was a woman I didn't recognize. Young, well-dressed, comfortable, like she'd been here before. And then, they kissed. Not a mistake. Not a slip. Not a greeting. A slow, intimate kiss like the kind he used to give me back when I still believed in us. I shut the laptop. Tears didn't come this time. Just silence. Heavy and absolute. That was all the proof I needed. But now came the hardest part, facing him. I waited until Sunday evening. He was due home around 5 p.m. I made dinner like usual. I tucked Sami into bed early. I didn't tell him what I was going to do, but I kissed his forehead a little longer that night, whispered a little softer, "You're safe now." At 5:17 p.m., I heard the sound of keys at the door. "Hey," Armin called, stepping inside like he owned the place, like nothing had happened. "Smells amazing. Missed you both." I walked into the kitchen and looked at him. His eyes scanned me quickly, then narrowed slightly. "Everything okay?" I didn't speak right away. I pulled out the USB from my pocket and placed it gently on the counter. "What's that?" he asked, trying to smile. "Proof," I said quietly. "Proof of everything you've been doing behind our backs." His smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "No lies, Armin. Sami saw her. He filmed you." His face turned pale instantly. That slight flinch, that sudden shift in his eyes, it was all I needed to confirm what I already knew. "You went through my things?" he asked, as if that was the betrayal. "You brought another woman into our home," I said, voice steady. "In front of our child. You lied to both of us. For how long?" He exhaled sharply. "It's not what you think, no. You don't get to use that line. Not after this. I saw the messages. I saw the video. Stop pretending." Silence. And then finally, his shoulders slumped. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I almost laughed. "Didn't mean? You planned this. You let her in. While I was out buying food for our family, you were sneaking around like a coward." "I still love you." "No," I said firmly. "You love the idea of this house. Of having a wife who keeps everything running while you get to play whatever game you're playing. But love, that's not what you showed me. Or Sami." His mouth opened, then closed. He had no words. No defense. "I want you out," I said coldly. "You don't get to stay here. You don't get to confuse our son anymore." He stood there, defeated. And for the first time, I saw him clearly, not as my husband, not as the father of my child, but as the stranger who broke everything. That night, I changed the locks. The days after Armin left were both quiet and heavy. The house felt unfamiliar without the sound of his voice, his keys jangling at the door, or his footsteps late at night. But it wasn't sadness that haunted the silence, it was the aftershock of betrayal. And yet, there was peace. Sami was the first to notice it. One morning, over breakfast, he looked up from his cereal and asked, "Is he coming back?" I paused, spoon midair. "No, sweetheart. Not to live here." He nodded, as if he already knew. "Okay," he said. And then, with a small smile, he added, "It's quieter now. I like it." His honesty cut deep, but it also reassured me. I hadn't just made the right decision for myself. I had made it for him, too. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding the life I thought I had. I met with a lawyer, filed for separation, sorted finances. I didn't rush to tell everyone what had happened. Letting the truth breathe was painful enough, I didn't need a chorus of pity. But the hardest part wasn't the legal process or the loneliness. It was facing my own self-doubt. I questioned everything. How did I not see it? How did I miss the signs? Was I too trusting? Too naive? Was I not enough? It took time and the quiet wisdom of a child to start healing those wounds. One night, as I was tucking Sami into bed, he asked, "Mom, are you sad?" I hesitated. "Sometimes, yes. But not as much as before." "Good," he said. "Because I don't want you to be sad forever. You're the strongest person I know." That broke me. I held him tightly, burying my face in his hair, whispering, "I'm okay now. Because of you." We began new routines together. We cooked dinner as a team, danced to old music in the living room, and turned bedtime stories into long conversations about dreams, space, and monsters that only existed in fairy tales, not in real life. Armin tried calling once. I didn't answer. He left a message saying he missed us, that he made a mistake, that he wanted another chance. I deleted it without listening to the end. Some bridges need to burn, completely, for new ones to rise. I didn't need closure from him. I had it the moment I looked into my son's eyes and saw peace instead of confusion. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand my strength. I wanted to find the version of myself I had buried under years of compromise and quiet sacrifice. Slowly, I began to smile again. Not for anyone else, but for me. And for the boy who saved me with his truth. Spring came quietly that year. The days grew warmer, the flowers bloomed along the garden fence, and with each sunrise, the weight on my chest grew lighter. There was no dramatic transformation, just small, beautiful moments of normalcy that reminded me life didn't end with betrayal. Sometimes, it began. Sami and I created a new weekend ritual, walks in the park, just the two of us. He'd bring his sketchpad, and I'd bring a book I barely read because I was always too focused on him, watching him heal, grow, and shine. One afternoon, as we sat under our favorite tree, he showed me a new drawing. It was the two of us. Me holding his hand, the sun shining behind us. We both had wide smiles. "I like this one," I said softly. "It's our new life," he replied. "No secrets. Just us." I kissed his forehead, tears brimming in my eyes, but this time, not from sadness. From pride. There had been dark days. Days where I doubted I could move forward. Days where I thought I had failed not just as a wife, but as a mother. But those days faded like shadows at noon. What remained was truth, courage, and love, real love. The kind that doesn't deceive. The kind that doesn't hide. I eventually sat down with Sami and explained things, as gently and truthfully as I could. That sometimes grown-ups make choices they regret. That his dad's mistake was not his fault. And that I would always choose his well-being over anything else. He listened quietly, nodded, then said, "I know, Mom. You're my hero. I never thought I'd need saving. But I did. And my son, the person I was supposed to protect, was the one who protected me in the end." I began taking online courses. Something just for myself. Something that reminded me I was still growing too. And with each new lesson, each new page, I started reclaiming the parts of myself I had given up during those years of being the perfect wife. One evening, after a long day, Sami and I sat on the couch. He looked up and said, "Do you think Dad misses us?" I thought for a moment. Maybe. But missing someone doesn't undo what they did. He nodded. Then added, "I don't miss the lies." Neither did I. And so, we built a new story, one of honesty, resilience, and hope. It wasn't the life I had planned. But it was the life I chose. And finally, after everything, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time, free.